So I have always tried to do this show with a kind of a zone mentality where it's like I want to cover sports, but I want to cover in a zone, in a comfort zone where I feel like most people are not willing to go or haven't gone, or maybe they've explored a topic that I'm interested in, but they haven't explored it in the ways or in a unique perspective that I think it could be discussed. And I don't know how many of you know this, but with my disability, with my love of sports, I've always had to look at that differently. And then that obviously led into like mental health and the agility and the flexibility of that. So I'm always kind of playing within those arenas, like mental health, different advantages emotionally, different advantages physically. And then because of my own disability, I have like an appreciation for sports and physicality and achievements that a lot of people don't. I know, for example, like people will say, "Oh, well, LeBron James, his longevity is impressive, but his physicality is like on a different superficial level for me because I don't know what it's like to play basketball." But some people even get that experience in high school or even like in grade school and recesses and things like that. So I don't even have that experience. So seeing somebody like LeBron kind of defy the odds in a physical way, it's just it hits differently. So with the passing of Bill Walton, it was uniquely a challenge for me because in a way he was just physically gifted and it made him really good at basketball, but he didn't even really like, it's not that he didn't love sports, but I don't know how many people know this. He grew up in a social worker family. I believe it was his dad worked as a social worker. His mom was an educator. Didn't really have a whole lot of sports influence in that family. Obviously, he has the physicality and the body type to become a 7-footer and all those type of things. But I think it was Dan Patrick talked about it, in his passing, that Bill Walton didn't even want to be referred to as a 7-footer because in his era in the 60s, it was seen as you were a freak if you were 7 feet. So for him, he was always 6'11". And then you learn, people like Donnie only know him for his personality because he was such a charismatic figure. And then you realize, oh, that's who he really was. He was the Grateful Dead. He had all these kind of artistic expressions outside of the game. He just played the game of basketball because he was good at it. But then he gets injured, and you're like, well, that was taken away. But in a way, some people's spirit's never taken away, or it's just never given the exposure it deserves. So what I did was I really took a long look at that because we had a suicide in golf this week that was very tragic, just on a scope that was unique because it wasn't like he never reached out for mental health resources before. It wasn't like he didn't talk about grief and it wasn't like he wasn't successful. He had hit his peak of professional, like his professional peak was just hitting. He had won just last year on the tour. And I believe contended this year, or maybe he won this year and contended last year. But he was just starting to round up in shape, Grayson Murray. And then literally talked about it when he won last year, about mental health and how he had overcome it and been so resilient. And then this happens and people always ask, well, why did it happen? Or how did it happen? It's because humans are fragile. We're not just fragile physically like Bill Walton was with injuries. We're also fragile mentally. And those fragilities are going to appear and reappear, and they're going to take on different forms of healing and recovery. I'm about to play this video with this comedian who lost his child 36 weeks into after having a child. I want to say within 5 months, you'll hear on the video, he makes a comedy show about it because he only knew one way to process things. He processes things with a kind of communal family environment, and he makes jokes and makes other people feel comfortable when he's going through tragedy. You could say that's right or wrong, but I think we do that in sports too. We use sports to overcome a lot of life challenges and a lot of difficulties in life. And so I just want to play some of these clips here and then get the guys' comments as well. But was there anything you wanted to add on to that before we play the clips?
I have nothing to add to that right now. Honestly,
Sorry,
you kind of came out of left field with this one. I knew you said you were going to talk about something serious. I didn't realize you were just going to go straight into the 3 people who died in the last week.
Yeah, well,
and all the aspects of death around everybody. Like, I was not expecting that. No, although I do know that's what you deal with a lot during your daily life. So I kind of don't like. Yeah, I'm not mad at you for it. I get it.
And it's not a pressure thing that you have. Like, that's if it's not how you process it. I just noticed a lot of people are kind of uneasy or they don't know how to discuss it. And so I put together this presentation now to kind of fill that gap. I think this is an interesting, fun way to look at it. Look at life. It's a fun way to look at life because like Bill Walton, for example, had a really fun life. He had a really fun, unique life that a lot of people couldn't relate to. And I just think this presentation pretty much sums it up pretty well. So I'm going to get right to it. Let me make sure it's full screen. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. We should be good. All right. Oh, I got to present it. You guys can see it.
We've been seeing your entire screen, everything you're going to present, all your stuff.
In your show about, I guess, why we're bad at talking about death and why we're bad at processing grief.
For most of modern history, grief was very public. Ritual wailing, the death wail, keening, just a bunch of ladies screaming. That was totally normal all over the world. You'd be living in the woods, have 12 kids, 7 of them die, and everyone's like, yeah, no shit. If you got sick, you just died. Runny nose, you're dead. Headache, dead. Rash, dead. So grief was terrible, but it was normal.
So who do you blame for why the people around you are so clumsy?
I mean, one of the things I put forth in the show is that science has gotten so good that it's so hard to die.
Now, when you get sick, you don't go to your priest, you go to your doctor. You don't get sicker, you get better. And once people stop dying, death isn't normal anymore. It's not inevitable. It's a failure. It's a shame. So we don't talk about it. We keep our grief to ourselves.
In my mind, I imagine like a sci-fi future in which like you have to try to die, like you have to pay to it to get your way out. But the medicine and scientific advances have gone so far that now it's like kind of embarrassing when somebody dies. It's like, well, you get questions like, well, did you try? Did you see this kind? What about this? It's like, I don't know, dude.
I just think that's such a powerful message. This is the comedian I mentioned at the top who lost his child 30 weeks after, having the child. And like, obviously he has love, but that's how he processes it. So I'll just continue with the video now and you guys will see. Because I'm not saying there's a right and wrong way to do things. Like Gov mentioned it. Bill Walton dies on the same trajectory of Grayson Murray, but obviously way different circumstances. I don't know why this video isn't playing, but no worries. I'll get it back. Let's see. All right, should be good now. You guys can still see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As you can see, like we say every time, very unprofessional of us. But
technical difficulties happen.
Yeah, we're really good at what we do. I'm glad we don't get paid for it.
Oh wait, well, hold on. I got it.
And ever since this happened.
It's good. You just had it.
I know I had it on the wrong screen. I thought you guys saw it the whole time. I'm playing this clip and you guys couldn't see it. Well, you know, if we were an edited show, we would edit, but we're not an edited show, so we'll just continue live.
Yeah.
My experience in life is doing comedy.
That you make ever since this happened.
My experience in life is that telling people about it in a way that is pretty frank and unornamented is way easier than any other thing.
We don't have 2 kids. We have 3. Truman is an identical twin, and his brother Fisher died when he was 34 days old. And that is what this show is about. And I know that is the saddest sentence in the English language. My son died.
In that moment, what ends up happening is the person you're talking to, their world kind of flips upside down. They think about their own kid. It's totally impossible to believe that what I'm saying could possibly happen.
There's a discomfort.
Yeah.
Like a fundamental, like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's also like, oh, there's no reality. Because like in reality, your sons don't die and parents die. Grandparents, your friend, maybe your friend dies. But the generation below you, that person doesn't die. And I think for someone to really internalize the possibility that could happen, like one of the promises the universe makes you is that whatever horrible shit will happen in your life, that won't be one of the things. You might have a disease, you might be in an accident, whatever, your kids will be fine. So people doing comedy about grief, and I, like a goddamn genius, read the comments.
Oh no.
And the comments in there, people hadn't even seen the show. So the comments in there were like, how dare this guy do this thing? It's, sacrilegious, it's perverse, whatever. There's those kinds of comments.
It's a good movie poster quote too.
Sacrilegious and perverse. One of my sister's best friends came to the show, and afterwards, I asked her how her kids were doing, and she said, "Well, I mean, thank God they're f***ing alive. Am I right?" And it was so shocking, but also like, I loved it. Like it's one of those things where like, so often when you talk, that person I don't think understands like the grief language, so to speak. But that's someone like being real with me about how they're actually feeling. And after years of talking about this, I find that very refreshing for someone to just say something that absolutely you should not say. Felt really nice and open. And it's like one of these moments where like, oh, you're a person.
Yes. So you're sort of like a through line in this conversation is wishing that a taboo was not a taboo. And the taboo is a taboo because it's meant to protect you.
Yes, totally.
You weak person that can't handle hearing what people might actually think about the thing that you're desperate to actually hear them say aloud.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I am circling as you articulate, I want this show to be a way of keeping my son alive, which I believe, speaking as you, that he still is. That genuine sentiment of he's still here. When did that set in for you? A conviction that this is not a rationalization. This is not a way of coping. This is just my worldview, because that comes through in the show.
I mean, it's going to sound kind of weird, but it happened in doing the show. Like the original version of the show that I first did at the Asian Comedy Festival or whatever, or that I did at...
I'm going to find a tape of that.
I promise you there is none. I didn't...
So what I find most interesting...
And this one really surprised me, although maybe it doesn't have. Perhaps the biggest...
You got it playing.
People doing comedy.
And this one really...
Hold on. I'll fix that one in a second. But what I'm really realizing with people is we always want to tell this really good story, but sometimes the life and death of things, the totality of a moment is sometimes a sad but also appreciative moment. Like, of course, if you could go back and say, oh, well, if Bill Walton wouldn't have gotten hurt, he would have been the best center, right? And maybe that would have been a positive, but maybe he wouldn't have taken up broadcasting, or he wouldn't have shown you a personality trait of like, who he really was. And so like I do think that sometimes we get lost in this identity of like, oh, he's an athlete. His job is this. Therefore, I know him for that. And we don't understand the human element. And it's okay that I messed up and there were some weird graphical technical errors, because guess what? That's what life is. Life is a technical error. And maybe if Grayson Murray had shot better on Thursday, he's not all depressed on Friday, and then, so who knows, one moment could change things in a fragility moment. And so that I just wanted to jump in and literally do this live with all of its errors, with all of its mistakes, and then shout out to people, that I did this from, obviously giving credit, because I do think that's important. We look at the way people have been talking about, like Grayson Murray, the golf world didn't know what to say the day that it happened. There were still golfers on the course that were golfing, finding out the news. Then people were like, well, Bill Walton was such a historic figure. We have to say something. So then people are pulling back memories. They're telling you stories. And then that's when you find out, oh yeah, this person really did have this impact. This person was more than just a basketball player. I thought that was very important. I know this might be uncomfortable, and like I'm okay with that. And part of that is like sharing that with my friends. And so like I am almost happy that some of you don't know what to say and you're uncomfortable, because that's my gift to you tonight.
I would say my favorite point that's been brought up so far is just how frequent people in human history centuries ago were more used to seeing death compared to our generation now in the present, where because if you guys look at the data via the UN population division, go back to 1770, people were fucking lucky if they made it to age 35, with just the way that medical science has been, and just the way that humans lived back in the day, where things were just not as advanced, where today, like, it's normal now to see people live until their 70s. And to see anybody leave this world before 70 can really rock our worlds, because we're privileged enough to not have to deal with death every day. I'm sure folks in multiple African countries, as well as the state of Palestine, would have something different to say about that, considering everything they're going through. But we're a lot luckier today to not have to deal with it as much, and everybody's story is going to be different too.
But then when we have to deal with it, with our rawness, that because of what we are exposed to, Evan, because we have to deal with it in this modern sense, we have a different relationship to it than most people, did. Like because we're not in the George Washington era of the Revolutionary War. When we die at 70, we're like, oh man, I wish I would have had 10 more years with grandpa. But it's like, if you told people in the Revolutionary War, you're going to go die this kind of patriotic death at age 40, they'd be like, well, at least he'll go down as a hero in the history books. Or like, even to take a more fun look at it, like think about Donnie Celtics right now. They're about to go into the finals. And people were like, well, the Celtics, they're a historic team. Of course, they're going to the finals. Like, it might be historically a fun franchise, a marquee moment. But forget all that. It's like the first time Donnie's like actually his heroes, the team that he cheers for. You don't care that you might care that they won 16 championships or 17 or 8. I'm a Lakers fan. I don't remember all 17 of those. It doesn't matter to me. So the times that you're in, the moment that you're in matters such a great deal. And I think that's grief is sometimes embarrassing in that way, because it reminds us that we're not going to last forever. Even this podcast, as terrible as it might have been tonight, is not going to last forever. So, there is just a fragility to that we have to appreciate.
God damn. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, me and Donnie will ramble on about basketball for 10, 15 minutes, but that was 20 minutes of something.
Yeah. In my town, it's a very small town. Everyone kind of knows everyone. We had an 18-year-old pass away in an accident, and the whole town, it really sent shockwaves, right? Because the two towns are really close, very so connected. It just sent a lot of shockwaves through, and people still go to their house every day, and they're always loaded with people. So it is just the difference in area, because up north that would never happen. And it's been over a month now, and it's still people are still, gathering together about it and talking about it. So it is interesting, the difference in just a little standpoint in the country where we handle it so differently.
Well, demographically, we talk about eras, but like that's where like a guy like Bill Walton should be appreciated, and kind of like that should be a unique experience because he played when I wasn't alive. So the fact that Donnie knew about him and he had that impact. I had this friend who I hadn't talked about sports with for like 10 years. He messaged me the day that it happened. So when moments like that can have a through line of what you remember, nostalgic, like that's what drives me nuts most about being a Lakers fan or a Celtics fan, Donnie, is people think that we have to enjoy the pageantry of being a fan, but I don't need to. I've never seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar play once in my life, but I understand he's the champion. Like, I understand what that means.
Yeah, see, with Celtics history, I don't care about all that. Like, obviously the banners matter a little bit. What matters more to me is like just everything that happened civil rights wise for the Celtics in that era. First, starting five that was all African American. Like that's the stuff that I more so care about as a Celtics fan. But I know that I probably am in the minority there. Like, and Boston's seen as this very disdained racial area, and of course, that's the way it's going to be because, when they first started, it was not well perceived.
Okay.
And we're only about just less than July 31st will make 2 years since we lost Bill Russell, too. So there's probably plenty of Celtics legends that wouldn't mind seeing the Celtics back in the finals right now.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of guys from that era that have died recently. Tommy Heisen, there's there's a lot of them that's starting to pass away.
And see, that's where like we can still understand the importance, and that's why you have to tell stories like this, even though if they're uncomfortable, I guess I'd say, because each person has their own endpoint to it. I'll just say in closing, I was in a community support page for like mental health and just like talking about mental health and how people process different things. And the one guy was talking about how gambling, funny enough, was like a bad trigger for him. Like he lost a lot of money. He over gambled. He didn't have good bankroll management. And I hadn't heard the whole conversation. And my point was how gambling kind of saved me. It gave me an opportunity to talk more sports and participate in sports in a way that I couldn't as a child. Like I wasn't an active, player on a court. I wasn't, taken serious as a coach a lot of times when I should have been. So DFS allowed me to be anonymous, but also show my sports knowledge and have a community and allowed me to meet Gov and allowed me to have, interconnections with Donnie through video games. And like, that's how I competed and kind of ran franchises. And then I meet, Evan through Dynasty and Fantasy connections as well. And it just hit me that like the golf news broke so quick on Twitter, and every one of the people that broke it first were DFS guys. So like this idea that we're all like gamblers with no hearts, or like people lose their homes over gambling. So it becomes this negative stigma. But what's a negative for some person can be a positive for others. And so I know it's a difficult conversation. It's supposed to be difficult. It's never supposed to be easy. That's why we appreciate like growth and development. And so that's why to kind of come full circle here, we're going to talk about the UFL. They were announced to get a second season. And some of the first things people did on Twitter this last week was make fun of it. And I just don't understand how you can take something that maybe you don't care about. Maybe you've never watched a second of spring football, but you're going to like make fun of it. I understand why people do it. I just don't understand why they would use that time to do it, if that makes sense.
That's because they just have too much. That's the bad part of having extra time. Some people will do a lot of good with the extra time. Some people will be lazy. And that is the argument against like giving people just like a baseline to live on. It's like some of you will do great things with a baseline to live on. Some of you will be lazy fucks. And now that we've hit on that, Palestine, racism, and death, let's move on to the UFL.
Yeah.
Let's build some lineups.
The taxes?
I got the
Death to taxes. Yes, thank you.
Before we get into like lineup building, do we want to go over the standing, what these games exactly mean?
Do we review our Week 9 lineups too?
We have not. But
Do we want to go over that real quick?
Yeah, you can talk about that as an
Guide
overview.
lineup. Pull that up, and we could talk about it and the last week of the season moving forward. Woo.
By the way, just as we transition here, next time, remind me before we go live that you have 3 screens of the same presentation on the screen. So the one you're presenting on screen is the one you should play. That's why we had the technical error. I know it doesn't make it any better, but at least explaining it from my perspective does help me.
Next time, dry run before we go live. Just start clicking through stuff. That way, we're not so surprised when the Grim Reaper does a monologue and a PowerPoint presentation for 20 minutes.
I do have the standings pulled up for when we decide to look at those as well, Logan.
Okay, now you want to look at last week's?
Last week lineup first a little bit, and then. No, I think this is probably going to be the most fun week since week 1 or 2. When we're just figuring things out, it's a complete reset.
It's just like in football. The last week of the season, who's sitting, who has something to play for, who do you actually
It's
want?
so much more fun, though, because we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how these coaches are going to work with us. We don't have any history on them.
We kind of know. Like, we've seen what these teams like to do. That being said, we have a new defensive coordinator in Birmingham. So, like, there's a lot of stuff that still could be different.
Man, it's weird that they fight. Like, I know it's a new league and there's like not any precedent for some of this stuff, so you're going to get a lot of experimentation, and that's going to bleed over to coaching staff sometimes. But man, it just seems so weird. Even upstart league, kind of like this one, that's not really known for a lot of structure, to fire a coach this late in the year. I mean, that's odd.
See,
Isn't it?
this is the kind of thing I want to. I'm not surprised. I kind of have a feeling that this guy is about to be on an NFL staff. Like, Birmingham has had a good defense the entire year. He steps away. I would not be surprised if he's now like a
if he has to take another job, that's completely reasonable.
And I think like that's the one thing the UFL, like, as much as they might hate, they have to be willing to let their coaches and players take another job somewhere. Like, if he ends up defensive coordinator at some college or NFL team here, I would not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes their product better. If they have to lose talent because of what their league brings value-wise to those people, they're going to bring in more talent because they're going to want to do the same thing.
Like, people are at least going to see that it's viable. Oh, I can play here, get better, show my talent, and I still can get there and there.
Yeah.
Even whether coaching or player. Like, that's very helpful for this league, I think. So, like, I would not be surprised if I see that at some point. It really doesn't. Now, if now all of a sudden he just walks away and doesn't have a job, then I'd start asking, like, okay,
yeah,
was it the head coach of them? Did you just get tired of football? Are you okay? Like, after what we've been talking about, I'd be like, are you okay?
That means it meant something. Evan, you were talking about meaning. What did this lineup mean to you? You mentioned reviewing it. So, like, what did you want to talk about since it
Scroll down so we can see the whole lineup.
Yeah, we gotta.
Like, I'm looking at the process. Like, I see one giant piece of chalk right there, but so a lot of people played Colburn.
There we go. Yeah. So the one thing I will definitely say is that I'm surprised that Jacob Sailors was only 13.6% in people's lineups. That shocks me for his price and production. And number 2, I'm so fucking glad we put him in because the other guys that we have outside of Wilkins didn't really hit. So I'm glad at least we had his production and everybody, we took some chances on guys like Ratliff Williams, and Ratliff Williams got 3 targets. So that's good, at least.
He did his job. No 0 is the goal.
Yep.
Yeah, but I just like the fact that he got 3 targets. That's key.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when I do NFL lineups, I'm looking at targets. Target share is so important to me because we can't always predict, especially in this league where it seems like a lot of teams are running 2 quarterback setups. You can't always predict who's going to be the stackable plays this week, who's going to score the most points. One thing that does seem to be translatable is can you get open? And that directly correlates to targets to me. And I'm glad you mentioned Sailors too, Evan, because Sailors gets a ton of work out of the backfield. I don't think we could undersell that enough. That's so important in a league like this.
It's kind of a
Uh-oh.
What?
on the ground.
Oh.
Yep.
We
What's
heard
going on?
it's kind of, and then we heard on the ground. Everything in
dear.
between did not come through.
This one is not my fault. This technical error is not my fault.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing.
I do think I've been permanently frozen. I can see him on my screen now. I think he's probably troubleshooting, but it's not great. Let me see if I can. Yeah. So if we do see movement from Evan, we'll know he's back. Is Sailors a must play though? Go.
I don't think he's a must play. Although the game is in the game that I want to play. So like it's up there. He's definitely a top play. Like especially if no one's gonna like getting him at 13% was crazy. Like I just wish one of our sub 10% guys had hit. That would have been very helpful.
Yeah, see, we're getting worse with Evan. He's lost his face now. So speaking of face value, we're gonna have to get him back before we make picks.
Oh, don't worry. We'll be fine. We'll definitely have him back before he makes picks. We could still get our numbers out of order because we know he's going 69.
It's true.
So like what do we want?
We could look at the schedule or what's going on here with the standings and stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say last week of the season. Let's do it.
But I did want to hit quickly though, Gov. You mentioned I think in week 2 how you didn't think there was a CMC in this league. It does kind of seem like Sailors might be the CMC of this league. Obviously, not quite the same guy, but like at this point, he has been proven super efficient. So to that, Donnie, go ahead with because you're going to break down the playoff implications of these teams.
Well,
right?
I think Gov has more knowledge on what's exactly happening here. If you want to give the exact what everyone's playing for.
Right. So we have the 2 conferences, and they are completely set. We know who the 4 playoff teams are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be San Antonio, St. Louis, Birmingham, and Michigan. Now, Birmingham and Michigan have basically, I think, nothing to play for. Because, this last game is... It's not going to do anything.
Yeah, there's pretty much no world where this flops.
Yeah. At best, they have the same record and are tied, and Birmingham has a higher point differential.
Sorry, folks, I'm back in now. I don't know what the hell was going on with StreamYard. That was giving me shit for some reason temporarily.
It's all good.
We are breaking down schedule right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the Birmingham-Michigan game has basically nothing to play for unless Michigan destroys Birmingham by, 50. So, it's basically a done deal.
It's a prove it type of thing where even though Michigan might not have anything to play for, they're still going to want to show up Birmingham.
I don't even know if they want to do that. Do you want to expose your playbook early? Just save what you keep,
Exactly. That game has the weird implications where both teams might not do much. You also have our favorite running back play from that game because they won't be using their other running backs are either going to be out with injury or won't be used. It's just no, what do you do? But then on the other side, you have the San Antonio Brahmas playing the St. Louis Battlehawks. That is actually a closer game, and the winner of that game will have home field in their playoff game for the conference. So, St. Louis has a reason to play and win.
And that's a big deal for St. Louis because St. Louis gets such a big crowd.
Yeah, the Battle Dome. The Battlehawks want to play in the Battle Dome.
Yes.
That is true.
San Antonio, I don't think there's a huge crowd for them, but otherwise,
St. Louis had their football team ripped out of them. They come.
Yes.
Well, okay, so we've seen Chase Garbers get injured though. Does that mean, and we saw Cody Lattimore get injured as well? I mean, those are all going to factor into how we build a lineup.
San Antonio has a lot of injuries.
So they've already, that's what I mean emotionally. They've already experienced kind of that wave of emotional injuries. Do you think they're more likely to rest guys because they're like, hey, the guys we have on our roster, we just got garbage back, we have to protect them? Or is it one of those things where it's like, hey, we've already experienced the ups and downs. I'm not going to ride this roller coaster. I'm just going to put the healthy guys out there when they're healthy and then keep the momentum up, because like a guy like Garbers has been out for a long time, and now he kind of needs those reps to make sure he's playoff ready.
I don't want to play in St. Louis. If I'm San Antonio, I'm going all out. I'm going for the kill shot here.
San Antonio's Week 9 attendance number is 11,839. So if I'm them, I'd rather play at my stadium where I at least have five figures.
I mean, I guess that's a specific. But what I'm saying is, like, because of the way this league is set up, and because the rosters are a lot smaller, and just like exposure is so much more key, do you think it's going to play? It's not the same as like an NBA player doing load management before the playoffs, or it's not the same as the NFL deciding, hey, we're going to take week 16 off because our team's already in position. I do think it definitely hits different being in this league, does it not?
It might. Like, technically, this is first year. Like, if you base it off the other leagues,
yeah,
there were teams that went all out and played their guys last game, even in meaningless games. Mm-hmm. And there were teams, like, they were showing them off, and then there were teams that were resting dudes. So, like, I'm not sure which way it's going to go.
And, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it did just pop in my mind. The commissioner of the league basically said they have like a loser's bracket, for lack of a better word, or basically they don't do a lottery for their worst pick. They basically play for it essentially when they're out of the playoffs. So there's
the bottom two teams will play a game, and that will be the game for the first round pick. Yes.
I do want to say this, because I do think this is interesting. San Antonio has two running backs out, McFarland and Lovett, and their only listed running back is Ellison. But they do have Puka Williams, who's 3,300, who's listed as a wide receiver.
He played both last week. Now, I will say,
I'm not saying it's a good play. I'm just saying it's interesting.
It is interesting, and if you definitely needed a salary, Ellison is kind of like a LeGarrette Blount type. Got 2 touchdowns, not fast at all, but is definitely your hammer back at the goal line. I think Ellison could be a good player.
I agree, but the last important game is this Houston-Memphis game. This is for the first overall pick. They have a lot to play for. Memphis, I mean, start off 1-0 and lose the last 8. I wonder how much coaching changes happen in this league after this.
Yeah.
After seasons like this, I wonder if it's going to happen.
See, I like sports media, and I like the inner workings. So you just saw the first 20 minutes, like, again, getting into the psychology of sports and like what it means for each person. So I like that there's inner dialogues between coaching staffs, between like what the offseason is going to look like. Evan, do you think this kind of approach does it curve tanking? Is it like, do you want to support something that at least, I want to call it body positive, or like where they're trying to be like at least proactively against just giving you garbage products? Like, there's got to be some value to that as a fan, no?
I don't understand. What's the question?
I'm saying, like, because they're not just like saying, oh, well, these two teams suck, they're not playing for anything, don't watch it. They're at least trying to make it a competitive arena to say they're playing for the first overall pick. It might be a little gimmicky, but I kind of do like at least they're trying to give us a competitive game one way or the other.
It's been brought up before, but I do think it's interesting that this is the first spring league that's going to have like a real rookie draft, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, this will be the first rookie draft for a spring league, and that's fun.
That they're actually trying to advertise and going to make it into a spectacle. Like, of course, they've done expansion type things, where it's basically just a press release. But this will be an actual draft.
So, Logan, what was I supposed to answer?
I'm saying, so as a fan, right? You appreciate that the two teams that don't actually make the playoffs, considered bottom tier teams because they're playing for something, because they have a motivation. Do you think? Can you appreciate that as a fan?
I mean, I don't see how you can fuck this up. There's only 8 teams in the damn league. Like, if there were 32, it's a lot easier to mess it up. But right now, we don't even know if they're going to get expansion teams to this league. So I'm not concerned at all with how everything is set up.
Can I bring up something very random that I just found out?
What's that?
Point guard Dennis Schroeder is playing for a pro German soccer team.
I saw that
for
video.
the Olympics. Yeah. That's so funny.
He's always been a soccer guy, right?
I have no idea. I don't know much about Dennis Schroeder.
No, I do believe he's always liked soccer. It's funny how Evan does contribute to the basketball conversation, but I do think you're right.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I haven't been a regular watcher in like probably almost 9 or 8 years or something like that. But I think I knew that about Schroeder from the past. I forgot about it until now.
Gov, is there anything from last week's lineup or last week's slate of games that you saw that you think we could hit on that remains in this lineup review that we could use for the lineup builder we're going to build in a few minutes? Like anything we're missing?
No, like honestly, when I look at the lineup, if I just take it one by one, it's like, okay, cover the names, cover the scores. I'm perfectly fine with that ownership.
Yeah.
Okay. I look at the game environments. Okay. The teams that were scoring points are on our screen. I'm perfectly fine with that. The only low scoring game was the one where we had our defense. Boom. Then I look and see that we hit on 1 nice ownership, 2 nice ownership with the quarterback. The chalk failed that we hit, and we didn't hit anywhere else with our low-owned guys. Otherwise, we would have cashed. I like the lineup. I don't hate this lineup. Like a couple balls, like Ratliff catches another ball or two, and we're right there.
So is this just like one of those situations where the prize pool isn't big enough? We know we're playing a niche sport, so this is just the volatility we have to accept with playing a sport that doesn't have as much a bigger prize pool. Where it's like the construction of this lineup was good, and we got to just build the same lineup and hope for a few different outcomes.
Like I don't think the process of building this lineup was bad. I think what we got with our correlations and the ownership we ended up being perfect. Did it hit? No, but it doesn't hit every week.
It doesn't hit every week. And I think because we had so much success early, we got that Durant call right. My personal lineup won first place. That was like week 3 or 4. I can't even remember myself. But all that does is build a cushion and makes this whole season profitable. I could play
exactly. That win covered the entry fee for the rest of the season.
Right.
So now it's just like we're free rolling. Let's keep taking shots at the top.
But I think
what's our 1% guy? Who's our Durant? We hit on a Sailors. We just didn't hit on either person or Ratliff Williams having like 10 to 15 points.
Right. And I don't think that gets discussed enough, where it's like, because it was because in the beginning of the season and the hype for UFL was higher. It's like, oh, well, these guys were successful and they dropped off. No, this is just DFS in general. Like, this is the roller coaster of DFS. And I'm perfectly fine with the way this lineup was.
I am too. I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think our results have anything to do with the competition in DraftKings either, with this being a lower played game. We just didn't happen to pick the right guys that produced, because that's the thing with the UFL that we've been talking about all year, is that A, they didn't get a preseason. B, this is still technically a new league, even if it's from teams that are combined from the XFL and USFL from last year. And C, this is still trying to be figured out by all the teams that hopefully should go smoother into next season.
That's a good point, because if the prize pools were bigger, if the contest was bigger, then we'd have more competition to take away the money. So I do like that point, Evan. Donnie, were you going to say something, or you want to build?
Yeah, I have the screen shared now that I have the laptop back of the random number generator. If we all want to give our numbers, I'm going to go 81.
27. Logan?
Let me go 7.
And, of course, Evan is 69. 17. Does that mean I get the snake?
Yes.
The best pick in the draft, baby.
Wait, who's closer, 7 or 27 to 17?
Damn.
Figure this out.
All right. Russian roulette it. We're going 1 out of 10.
Holy shit, I don't want to shoot, Logan. Holy crap. Hold on.
Especially after the
Oh,
topic.
no. What's he going to grab?
Wait for it.
Going to grab. You're in Florida, so I'm scared.
I need my best car. Hold on.
Oh, never mind.
We just came full
Good.
circle. We're talking
Shoot
about
away. Armor's on. Do what you got to do.
All right. 1 out of 10. Give us a number, guys.
6.
Logan?
6.
Well, you can't both pick the same number.
Oh.
This is so detrimental. I thought I heard them both say 6.
They both did say 6.
I answered at the same time, so I didn't want to change my answer in case the people had heard it on the stream. I didn't want to seem like this was.
All right.
Let's try this again.
Yeah.
2.
You still want 6, Gov?
8.
7. All right. Gov, you get first overall.
This was like rock paper scissors.
That is the first time in how many shows that's happened?
True.
No, and it's the first time you show the number generator on screen. Like, I'm surprised it didn't just come up 69.
Oh, that would have been great. I haven't gone third in a while, though, so this will be good.
All right.
All right. Okay, bring up the lineups, Logan. I know who we're going to go. We're going to bring in our first pick. Oh, he was right there on the screen, too.
I bet he was.
I like the value. You know who it is. We're going to wide receiver, tight end.
Canella?
Oh, cheaper. Mariner. I love, like, you take out the 1 week, he's consistent targets. I'm willing to take the shot.
I'm going to be honest. It took me a while to find him because I'm like.
Yeah, 5,900. There we go.
I was annoyed at first because I wasn't sure if he was a tight end or wide receiver when I was first building earlier this week.
Who do you want now, Logan?
Let me just get what I think is going to be a really good value. Let me get, well, actually, we talked Mariner, so let me take Ellison on the other side because I was debating which running back would be the better value. Pay $800 more for Ellison, but it gives us another guy for that game. So that way we're not stacking too high.
Perfectly fine with that. I like Ellison, McCray. Those are basically the 2 running backs I'm playing. You have 5K running backs. You're going to be able to fit a lot of stuff in your lineup.
There's lineups where you might play both of them, but we didn't need to do that right now. So,
like I don't know if you need the value of playing like Mariner and Ellison and McCray. Like, I literally don't think you can fit enough in. Like, I think you could then play the most expensive of everything and still leave money on the table.
Right.
So I'm not sure it's necessary.
At that point, we're looking at a Michigan, Stallions kind of stack, and I didn't want to put us there already.
Yeah. So what you going, Evan?
So, fellas, continue calling me the Memphis hater because I want to go with Justin Hall.
Ooh.
Do you believe in that?
What was that?
Do you believe that he's like a real deal? Like he is like the best wide receiver in the league? Because
No, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say the best wide receiver in the league. I'm just looking at the volume that he gets on a consistent basis, and he is capable of taking rushes even if they don't really fucking go anywhere. So, I love the volume that he gets and the average yards he gets per catch. Even if it's only 5 targets, fuck it, stick him in.
I'm glad you brought him up.
I can't hate on that.
Well, the first week of the season was the only week he really failed. That's when no one knew who he was. He was like $5,000 cheaper, and it was against Memphis.
Yeah, but it's week 1, right?
Right. But that's what I find so ironic about this. His worst game was against Memphis. Then he dominated in target share all the rest of the games. They've only increased, and now he's playing his Memphis kind of the one team that shut him down. So like, what if he just plays with a total abandonment of attitude and just wants to show out? It could definitely happen.
Yeah, and being that this is the Houston-Memphis game where both of these teams definitely got something to play for, give me some of that pie, baby.
It's not even both these teams have something to play for. These players have so much to play for. It's their last chance to show up for teams that are signing guys for training camps.
Mhm.
This game is really important to these guys.
That's league-wide, though.
Yeah. Well, that's not league-wide quite because you got the championship teams that are still going to be playing, their hearts out.
I'm glad you brought that up, Donnie, because it's true. I mean, if you looked at it, the only team that's kind of like giving them that statistical black eye is Memphis. So, like, this is his second, this is the rubber match if you want to use an MMA term. So I like it.
All right, I'm going to do something that seems completely out of left field, and you guys might hate the play.
Do it. Do it.
Amari Rogers had 6 targets last week. Birmingham doesn't have much to play for. He's going to be the best player on the field, most likely. If he gets that kind of volume, I'll take it.
I forgot he was still even on Birmingham.
Bold move there, brother.
It is a bold move. It's probably going to have low ownership. I think it's a good play.
He's been
I don't think it's necessary, though. Like I said, it's a bold value play when there's more obvious values to play. And I think, to be honest, you can spend money. Like, I legitimately think if you could jam in like.
Well, I'm just gonna jam in Sailors right here.
Like I was about to say, you could still do that. You could do that and not have to pick Amari Fuckhead.
I believe in it. He is going to be the most talented player on that field.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's picking defense at this point? Is that collective?
We are down to what?
It's technically Evan's pick here.
Okay.
It's your pick. You can either pick our quarterback or pick our defense.
I think I want to go defense here because I feel like I have an easier time with that. Let's go with the... Well, we can actually afford to do it, and I love Birmingham's defense, even if it's going to be a tougher matchup against Michigan. Let's go with the Stallions.
And it makes some sense because we are playing someone from Michigan, but we are playing their passing game. So essentially, if we get a couple turnovers, it's going to favor both of these outcomes. It'll favor our defense and our wide receiver because obviously if a team's down, they're going to be throwing more, which obviously is in Marriott's favor.
So what I'm also thinking, too, is that because the Stallions had a change in defensive coordinator, I'm wondering if that's going to make the players here in DraftKings not want to pick them as much.
Well, also considering like the change happened last week, and last week they gave up more rushing yards than they had all year.
It's
the last 2 weeks, they've if you go into the thing I'm worried about, if you click on the Stallions, would be you go into their game log and you see that specifically just rushing yards and total yards. They've been, go into their game log. The last 2 weeks specifically, since the coaching change and the guy walking away, have been pretty awful compared to having a pretty good defense the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because they've quit and they know they've got stuff locked up? Is it because the defensive guy left and shit's going downhill? I don't know.
Houston, I could give
they definitely have the talent.
You're playing down to competition with Houston,
because they still got 2 and 3 sacks in those games.
Yeah.
You guys tell me if I'm wrong here, but this seems like universal sports language. If you want to wake up a team that's kind of quit on you or like you don't feel like they're giving you full effort, you fire a coaching member on that staff. That's going to wake up any team. It could be football, it could be baseball, it doesn't matter. You start firing, your bosses. People are going to either start to wake up or at least at the very least show their true colors and be like, oh yeah, you weren't ever going to play well.
Now, the reason why I was going salary saver was because I wanted to leave us enough money to play McCarron.
So it looks like we are $500 short.
We are $500 short.
That's fine. Because I'm pretty sure, have they said McCarron's starting?
They have something to play for. I'd assume he's starting.
They haven't officially announced it yet, but the game sheet has McCarron ahead of what the hell is his face? Remind me.
Wilkins?
Yeah, Manny Wilkins. Yeah, McCarron is listed as ahead of Manny Wilkins on the game info sheet.
Let's be fair, though. He was ahead of him last week, and that's why he was I think 7% owned and got people to 0. I'm okay with it as long as we admit that it could happen. I'll try to make sure it doesn't happen, but if it happens, we know the risk we're taking.
Right.
So if we wanted to move down from the Stallions defense, my second choice would be the Brahmas.
As of right now, I will say with the Battlehawks, 3 days ago the report is it is day-to-day still. He has a significant ankle injury that we are trying to get better. It's the exact quote.
So it's possible they have to hold him out for the playoffs.
It is possible that they have to hold him out right now for this game. I think he'd play in the playoffs, but it is possible he has to be held out for this game.
All right. So which direction do we want to go at quarterback in that case?
I'd want to stay away from McCarron altogether. I think his price too high. I think even if he plays at a limited. He plays at a limited capacity, and I would just think there's better options.
Now,
I kind of want to get a piece of that Houston-Memphis game because I suspect there's going to be a lot of passing involved. So I'm thinking it's going to be either Henderson or possibly where the fuck is the Memphis quarterback? Josh Love.
I don't know, but I do know Michigan plays a ton of quarterbacks as well. I want to stay away from that situation.
I agree.
Bama might also split Martinez and Corral. So, like, that's that.
Yeah.
If I didn't stack, like, to be honest, if I don't, like, take my chance on stacking St. Louis, like, I would love to just, like, have the news to be able to stack. Like, I would be fine just putting in Wilkins. And if we know McCarron is definitely the starter, just switching down the defense to like the Brahmas and then going Wilkins and then going up to McCarron.
At least we know Wilkins is great on his feet.
Yeah. I would trust Wilkins to play. Like, even if like they don't give us confirmation, I still think there's a chance like McCarron doesn't play the whole game.
Well, to be fair, and this is important to note because a lot of games that started at noon, the first Saturday game is started at noon or 1 o'clock. This game starts at 2. It is the game in question. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. There is a game. It starts at 2. That was my whole point. It's almost 2 hours after the first original game it has been starting. So there is going to be more time to adjust lineups if needed. Are you guys okay with that, going Wilkins in, and then with the idea that we'll play McCarron if he's available?
Yeah, if McCarron is named the starter, we will pivot up to him and down to the Brahmas defense.
That's good. I like Wade Phillips, by the way, defensively. They've been really good.
Yep. And that's another, like, again, that's the other game that has the most to play for is the San Antonio-St. Louis game.
I did want to mention quickly, because I know we didn't get to any other wide receivers, but there's a ton of wide receiver and pass catching options. With Garbers coming back, he obviously favors Stevenson, who is a fast receiver, where Dempsey did not favor Stevenson during their time. And then Cody Lattimore actually went out in the first quarter of last week's game. He's basically done for the year, won't even come back for the playoffs. So it could be Smith. It looked like Smith. That's who Garbers obviously made famous that week. I think it was week 3. So if you needed a cheap value, I would specifically, personally, look towards the Brahmas there as well. Is there any other value that we want to hit on?
No, I think we've talked about most of them. Like, we've got the running backs. We've hit on Mariner. You've hit on Smith. Like.
We did decide to go Ellison just to be a bit different and get a piece of that Brahma game, so we're not so heavy on the Michigan. But if you guys were to play a running back from the Michigan Panthers team, given that Colburn is projected out, and then they already lost Hills, would you play McCray? Would you save the extra $1,000? Like, where would you go ownership wise? Go. I know you're a big gamified guy. So, like, what would the game tell you to do in terms of ownership, in terms of upside?
Logan, can I give another suggestion on how to save the $500?
What's that?
Instead of doing all that switching to defense and stuff, just change my Amari Rodgers to McCray.
Oh yeah, that would do it right there.
That would do it perfectly. If you'd rather do that,
would you? Well, let's talk about it. Would you rather do that than switch to defense?
Yes.
I would rather get off Rodgers than the Stallions first and foremost. Yeah, unfortunately.
I'd be happy with doing that now if we wanted.
I'd honestly consider doing that now as well.
Okay, we're going to do that now then because I 100% want to do that, and
that just makes more sense for this lineup. He's going to get more work. He's just definitely going to get more work.
Rodgers isn't respected enough in the passing game to make me feel comfortable sticking him in too.
I think it makes sense if we didn't have a 5K running back who's going to give us more. No matter how even if Rodgers has his ceiling game, he gives us 20 points. That's such an outlier. Then McCray could easily do that as well.
Or if Rodgers fails and McCray only gets you 15, it's still better to have McCray who is.
Yes. So I just think that's the play there, and let's not be silly about it.
Yeah. So now Wilkins can just be McCarron.
I also am playing a 3 running back lineup this week.
See,
I was about to point that out. I like this.
I'm very tempted to play. How would you pronounce it, Tua?
Oh, Tua?
I'm tempted just for the price. He's cheaper than Durant. I think he's the cheapest, viable option.
And Michigan has shown to have sort of a split backfield, so I don't think they're going to give McCray everything.
And even
so, I could definitely see if he falls in the end zone,
right.
If this guy catches a touchdown at 4K, that is going to be something you could use.
Well, that's kind of what
he'll be much less owned than these other 5K guys that are going to pull all the ownership.
I mean, think about what Ellison did, and now he's obviously that's one of the reasons he's got so much touchdown upside. He had 15 points. Well, didn't have a good game at all, but had 2 touchdowns, so it looks like he did. This week he's going to get all the blind watch. He doesn't get a single touchdown and fails. Well, touchdowns are such an outlier to your point, Gov. I mean,
hold on. Did this guy play in the AFL? Because when I search up his name, the UFL or USFL before that.
What, Morgan Ellison?
No, Tua or whatever his name.
Maybe. Tua?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he might have played.
We're like super fans. We've done multiple shows each week on the
I was about to say, I don't know what is right now the 5th string running back for Michigan. No, I don't know who this is.
There's limits to your football.
There is limits to my knowledge.
But I do think there is value to walk.
He was part of the 2023 roster. So hold on, let's see. He had damn.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to show me the stats. But anyway, this is a roster the coaching staff knows.
Okay, but now we have the money, I believe. So do we actually make the McCarron player, or do we leave Wilkins in there now?
I'd rather leave in Wilkins for now.
Yeah, but we know we have the ability to pivot to McCarron if they name him the starter.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't think he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, whoever's the starter of that game, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I know this was a weird start to an episode. We talked about the finale of the death. I want to mention really quickly. There's a guy named Mochi who's been working really hard on the Discord channel. I'm going to put his link in the description. Talk about trying something new and being innovative and different. He's doing his best 5 bets, I believe, every day, and he gives you a breakdown, not of bet this and you'll win a bunch of money. But he gives you kind of a breakdown of why he bets these 5 things each day. It's a very unique way of kind of gambling and his association to why he makes those bets. And there's obviously some sports angles to it, but then there's the emotional, why he wants to win and that kind of thing. So I want to support that young kind of movement and, trying something new. He was a bit nervous about it because he was like, well, I'm not sure I'm a writer, but this is an interest, this is a passion of mine. So I'm going to try it and see if I can garner any attention. So I figured I'd shout him out rather, and leave his link in the description if you guys are curious about how people build lineups. Because one of the ways that me and Gov got into podcasting was I really thought there was a void in bankroll management. And I do think there is a void in how you structurally go about betting. It's not as easy as open up sportsbook, bet on this. To do this with a sustainable passion and enjoyment, you have to do it over a long period of time. So having that bankroll or that accountability to say these are why I made this bet, I think is a very valuable tool in the space that goes underappreciated. So
anyone can just blindly make a bet. To actually putting a bet in that you have thought and you truly you think you actually said it better. It's yeah, like to know, like to have the investment, to have done the research and all that, like to understand why you made the bet and to make it in a like with your bankroll in mind. Like, okay, is this the kind of bet I can actually bet the house on? Kind of bet. Like, okay.
Right. Well, and like just to close up, like these like small little.
By the way, you never bet the house. Don't.
No, don't bet the house.
This is not financial advice, but don't fucking do that.
Unless it's a dollhouse, in which case you're trying to get a bigger dollhouse. No, but in all seriousness, so that is what I felt like was missing, was just like the ability to say like, this is why I do it, and like some of these podcasts are archived just so I can go back and look at it and say like, hey, remember when I said this? Like, I remember pulling back on to show one of my friends the Caitlin Clark argument, because he's like, you weren't a fan of Caitlin Clark. And I'm like, dude, I said it on a podcast 5 months before she was, the quote unquote thing. And so like having that accountability has helped me not just be a sports guy, but like have that emotional connection. So I want to say, again, it was a bit of an awkward, fun show of character. And I appreciate all of you guys. Like and subscribe if you want more. I promise I won't talk about death every week, but thanks for sticking with me tonight.
It was a big deal, though. We lost 3 key players in sports.
And very different reasons in very different ways. So I thought it was important to highlight, the difference. So good night, guys. Take care.
Not everyone. Celtics in 6. It's going to happen.
Peace out. Go Mavs.
Oh, I better just end the show.